Hey there. Today we're going to talk about organizing our writing, and we're going to focus on the text structure, which is sequence. Now you're going to need to think about to yourself, when are you going to use a sequence text structure? What information would you be giving when you want to use the sequence text structure? And you would use this structure when you feel that you want to get your readers to understand the order of certain events, and also how much time has passed between the events, because often that's an important part of the information you want to give. Sequence is an important structure to use when you know specific dates or the order that something happened in. Now, before we continue, I would like you to read the Mount Rushmore article, The Story of Mount Rushmore. You can pause the video, read this article now, and then play the video again when you are ready to go through the article. Okay, let's get started. I'm talking about our sequence structure. So like I said before, sequence structure is important when you know the dates and the order that something happened in. We're going to start off by reading the first paragraph, and we're going to notice that there is a date immediately in the beginning. And that's giving me a clue that if I write about this information, I might want to use this type of structure. So it says, in 1923, a man named Doane Robinson had an idea. He wanted to have a large sculpture made. It would be so big that people would come see it. And if you continue throughout this paragraph, it's talking about what his idea was and what he wants this sculpture to be. So I'm noticing that right here, I have a date, I have a year, and I also know what happened in this year. I know that in 1923, Doane Robinson had an idea to build a large or very big sculpture, and he wanted it to show heroes of the West, and then he had some ideas of what that might be. So if I'm looking at this article and I'm trying to organize my information, organize my notes, that's what I'm going to start with. I'm going to start with my first year, kind of thinking about a timeline. So in here, I have my notebook page set up. My topic is at the top, Mount Rushmore. And my first piece of information is going to be the year 1923. And I'm going to not put all of this exactly how it is in the article, but I'm going to summarize it in a sentence to be able to say what happened in 1923. So I'm going to say, Doane Robinson had an idea. Here's my continued thought. So in 1923, Doane Robinson had an idea to build a large sculpture to show heroes of the West. Now I'm going to continue reading my article, looking for more dates. So why don't you do that now? Why don't you go through the article, write on your article, maybe box your date, and then underline some key words that would go with that so you can come up with information to write down in our notes. Pause the video and do that now. Okay, so you should have noticed that there are two other years in this article. So the first one I put a box around was October 4th, 1927. And looking at what information I want to match with October 4th, 1927, I looked at the next part of that sentence where it says Borglum started work on the mountain. And then I realized that's not enough information for me about who this man is, because it's just giving me his last name. So that tells me that somewhere in the article, it also introduced who he was. And that's back in the second paragraph. So I went back into this paragraph and I underlined that Gutzon Borglum was an artist, and he is the person that Robinson found to do this. So I went back and underlined that information because I know I'm going to put it with my date when I take my notes. And then I did underline his name here, and he started work on the mountain. So I think it's really important, especially after reading the rest of this article, that we as readers, and when we teach other people, we know what year Mount Rushmore was started. So in my notes, I'm going to put October 4th, 1927. Also noticing that's 4 years later. Why don't you try to come up with a sentence to go along with October 4th, 1927? I'll do the same. You can pause the video and then we'll compare what information we came up with. Okay, so here is what I came up with for October 4th, 1927. Gutzon Borglum began working on Mount Rushmore. He is the artist Joan Robinson chose to work on the sculpture. So that's my information for 1927. And then the last date that was given to us was October 31st, 1941. So Halloween of 1941, Mount Rushmore was finished. And it included the 4 faces of American presidents. And I think it's also important that they put it in the Black Hills area. So it's important to ask, like, what is it, when was it built, and where is it located? So those are all the pieces of information I'm going to include here. So I would like you in your notes to write this sentence for this date. And I also would like you to figure out how many years did it take for Mount Rushmore to finish? Because I think that's a very major part of the information you're gaining. So pause the video, write that, and then we'll compare our notes. Okay, so if I look at my information that I added for October 31st, 1941, I said Mount Rushmore was finished. It is in the Black Hills and has the faces of 4 presidents. It took 14 years to complete, and I did the math from 1927 to 1941. So here are my 3 dates from this one article on Mount Rushmore. And if I were to continue researching Mount Rushmore and I found more dates to go along with the progress of the mountain, I would be able to add them in. Obviously not in this page, but having all of the dates and then organizing them in order. So when you're looking at information and you're noticing that things are in a timeline or they're going in order, sequence is a great structure to use because it helps your reader follow along and know how long certain things took, just like we learned that Mount Rushmore took 14 years to complete. Now we're going to answer some questions in our notebook based on this, so you can pause the video as I go through them. Question number 1, why did the author choose those years to include in the Mount Rushmore article? So why choosing those 3 dates? Question number 2, why would someone use the sequence structure in their writing? Question number 3, what would be a topic for an informational text that would not work with a sequence structure? So I really want you to think about what would be something that you would research and you think about sequence and you know it is not the text structure for you to write about. So answer these 3 questions, and thank you.